Hey, y'all. Hello, and welcome back to Night Shift with Andrea Up Late. Welcome, everybody. We got a couple people in the chat. I am joined, as always, by my trusty sidekick, Brian Sanders. How you doing, Brian?
Great and wonderful.
Great and wonderful. I like that. I like that. Happy Tuesday, everybody.
I like your aqua green shirt.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. If I don't have pajamas on when we start the show, it's a plus for everybody that's tuning in live. If you are new here, Brian Sanders is a retired homicide lieutenant, so obviously his expertise lends a lot of knowledge and insight to a lot of the cases that we cover. And we are a live YouTube show on Tuesday nights. Anytime between dinner time and bedtime is when we air live every week without fail. You can hop in the chats with us live. It's free of charge. You just use your email that you were assigned at birth and a password of your choosing. And if you are more of an audio listener, like when you're in the car, jogging, cleaning house, whatever, then you can listen. Usually on Wednesday or Thursday, we'll drop the episode to like an iTunes, Spotify, you name it, wherever you listen to audio streaming. But without further ado, we are doing a case that is a little unlike what we usually do, I think. We've done some of the big names, right? Some of the prolific, more infamous killers, more widely known stories. I don't often do those because I feel like if they're out there like that, then you all know everything there is to know about them as well. I'm not bringing anything new to you in that situation. But then I always, whenever we do, realize that I'm learning a lot because the more you take time and dig into this stuff. So maybe I can provide you guys with some things that you didn't know before. And if you are new here, again, we usually cover unsolved or unresolved cases for the most part, I would say. This one is definitely one of the history books. It's, for the most part, I think, pretty much solved. There may be some pieces and parts to it, no pun intended, that we don't for sure know about, but we're going to get into it. And so instead of pop culture news that we like to do before the episode, sometimes Brian has a piece that he's going to put in at the end of the episode that'll kind of tie all of this up together. If you're new here, evidently I say if you're new here a lot, so just go on and drink to that. But we also like to engage our friends in the live chat at the beginning. So that's another reason that we invite you to come on in. And then feel free to ask questions there throughout the story. If we're telling a story, some are much more complicated, I think, than others. This one's pretty straightforward. I mean, for what it is, if it can be. Yeah. It's not that confusing anyway. And so, but if you have questions, ask them. We try to get to them as we go. And then we just like to wrap up the show every week with just kind of engaging with you guys and seeing what's going on in your lives. So I think we should probably get started. What do you say? It's warm in the studio tonight.
It is.
Oh, Falk says she's not surprised who we picked. And you're talking about tonight's episode, I guess. Mm-hmm. If you guys have been around here and there, then you know that we do enjoy our Halloween costumes. And so I will tell you a little secret between you and I right now is that I'm wearing the bottom half of my Halloween costume right now, only because I was trying it on earlier.
Yeah.
So we'll try to put some clues out in the next couple of weeks. We're having a big Halloween party on like the weekend before Halloween this year. So y'all hit us up if you want to come. The more the merrier. It's gonna be fun.
Falk asked if it was my idea. Reference Buffalo Bill.
What?
I'm assuming tonight.
Oh,
like if I picked, I guess since I was Buffalo Bill for Halloween.
Yeah, Brian made the best Buffalo Bill ever. All right, what do you say? You ready to do this?
Yeah.
All right. So, okay, guys, we're gonna get started here. On November 16th, 1957, the International Harvest Products Shop was not conducting much business. I did say 1957. That's another anomaly for us. We usually don't cover cases much beyond the 70s or, before the 70s. But this case actually kind of encompasses, quite a few years. So in 1957, the International Harvest Products Shop was not conducting much business. This was a bit unusual, but it was the first day of deer season in Plainfield, Wisconsin. And that would be a lot of citizens are going to be taking advantage of this day is what that means. Okay. So Plainfield, Wisconsin at this time had around 700 people. So a population of, I think the kids go to school with So much more than that. So that was the whole town. Okay. So first day of deer season, they're not thinking too much about this general store being, not operational, even though it was not the norm. So the owner of the store was also gone. So Deputy Frank Warden thought it was odd that his mother, 58-year-old Bernice Warden, was not at the register like normal. Deputy Warden, Bernice's son, and the sheriff looked around to see that the register was also gone. There was a little bit of blood on the floor, and it was evident that a .22 caliber rifle was not in its normal place on the shelf. So again, you guys, 1950s Wisconsin, it's a general store. So that's pretty much what you can imagine. There's probably cans of beans on the counter. There's going to be some tools, maybe some cans of oil. And then, you can probably purchase firearms there as well, it sounds like. So this rifle had been for sale. So it was not in its normal place, and they found a receipt for antifreeze on the counter. So the order was for a half a gallon of antifreeze. So this is interesting to me. I had not thought about this, but in decades past, if you need antifreeze, you just run down to the store, grab a jug of antifreeze, right? Mm-hmm. So there, though, they actually pumped it, almost like you would pump like gasoline. There was like a pump for it. You tell them how much you need, and you come back the next day and get your quantity of antifreeze. So there was a receipt on the counter for a half a gallon of antifreeze. So the receipt for that was issued to none other than Ed Gein. It had been the last sale of the night prior. So the sheriff and deputy warden left at that time to talk to Ed to try to start figuring some things out and hope they can locate Bernice. So they actually do. They find him at a local grocery store and take him into custody just to start asking some questions, because clearly this looks like an odd scene. I mean, they got the blood on the floor and a cash register gone. So initially he's brought in under the idea of, larceny, of just like theft. Did he just take this and leave? But obviously the blood left them with a lot more questions and concerns about, of course, the deputy's mother, who was running the register. So they take him in, but meanwhile, other cops go on to Ed's house. This was on a 195-acre farm. And so they didn't really have a neighbor for any closer than about a mile away, okay? When they get there, it's very, very quiet. There's really nothing going on there at all. And the first step they make onto the property was actually into what they call a summer kitchen. So the summer kitchen is just an outbuilding on the property. So this was separate from the actual farmhouse, okay? So it's starting to get dark outside, and it's certainly dark inside this building. So the cops are using their flashlights to look around inside. So around this time, okay, guys, this show's never really made for kids. This show tonight is definitely not made for kids. So this is not one that kids need to listen to. So the sheriff swings around with his flashlight and catches something kind of swinging from the rafters, okay? He had bumped into it. So when he swings around, something's hanging there. And he later recounts that he thought initially that maybe it was just a deer hanging. Again, remember, it's the first day of deer season. But as he turns around and shines the light in the direction of what he sees, he realizes that it was a horrific sight. It was not a deer. In fact, it was the nude body of Bernice Warden. That would be the lady who was supposed to have been at the general store, right? It was hanging upside down by the ankles. The right ankle and left ankle were tied together basically like with a rod, right? Separated with a rod and attached to the ceiling beams in that way. Her arms were tied up by her side. So if she's hanging upside down, her arms are not hanging down toward the floor. They're actually up by her legs, kind of strung to her legs. She had been decapitated and she was dressed out, in fact, like a deer. Okay, so she's kind of hanging there. Everything looks the way you would dress out a deer if you have gone hunting. She was cut from basically her pubic area all the way to her sternum and turned out with all of her organs removed. So the sheriff immediately runs outside. He puts his hands on his knees and proceeds to vomit. They're able to get other units on site and start to go through, the home, search the land. And the search of this property and home lasted about a week. Okay. So here inside Ed's house, police find these items, and I'm going to list all of them. And so it is bizarre and gross and weird. So just know that that's what's coming. Many whole and partial human bones. Check. Just saying that we may have stuff like that in the closet. A wastebasket made of human skin. Okay, a wastebasket made of human skin. I've read these things so much and I wrote them down that saying it out loud, I mean, just picture what I'm saying. So a human skin covering several chairs. I'm going to go on and show you this. I've got a little bit of this here for you to see. I think I've got a picture of so here's one of the cops holding one of the chairs. So keep in mind, you guys, whenever you see, if you were to like look up Ed Gein and look up his like artwork, if you will, that's how people like to describe it. So what's happened is that over the years, actual artists have fashioned what they perceive to be a likeness of Ed Gein's atrocities. And since most of these items were destroyed early on, like when all this was going down, they were taken, like photographs were taken for evidence, and then they got rid of these things. So a lot of the stuff is not actually easily able to be found, right? So like this, for instance, from a distance looks like a typical chair. The chair online that you see all the time that it's like Ed Gein's chair is like, it looks like a big, like a lazy boy with actual faces all over it. That was not what he made. Like this is what he made, okay? Human skulls mounted on bedposts, skulls with tops sawed off, bowls made from human skulls. Now, you guys, I will put a picture of that on Andrea Upload Instagram, but it looks like if you were to go to the Halloween store right now to decorate for a party, and you would see the actual, like a, you know, what looks like a human skull with just like the top part of the skull cut off, so you still have like the orbit, the nasal cavities, the teeth and mouth and everything, but hollow from the inside. And he would make bowls out of these to eat his dinner out of. Bowls that were made, I told you, from human skulls. A corset made, and we're going to come back to this one, but a corset made from the skin of a female torso, skinned from basically shoulders to waist, with the breasts still attached. Leggings that were made from female human leg skin, masks made from the skin of female heads, 9 vulvas in a shoebox, a young girl's dress, and the vulvas of 2 females judged to have been around 15 years old, a belt made entirely of female nipples that were sewn together, 4 noses, a pair of lips on a window shade drawstring, a lampshade made from human skin and fingernails, multiple fingernails alone. Also found in the search of this home, remember I told you that when Bernice's body was found in the outbuilding, like hanging from the rafters, she had been decapitated. So also in the home were her entire head in like a burlap sack, and also her heart in a plastic bag kind of sitting in front of his potbelly stove. So about 3 years prior, a woman by the name of Mary Hogan had also gone missing. And during the search of Ed's home, Mary Hogan's skull was found in a box, and her face, remember he often would separate the skin from the skull, was found in a paper bag. It was determined that both Warden and Hogan had both been shot with a single bullet. And so we're going to get into all of that. You know, we do like to talk often about like the why behind the crime or the psychology behind some of this. So one thing we can say right now is that while all of this skin and all of these bodies were mutilated to make whatever he deemed necessary in the moment, the victims were not tortured. So it wasn't overkill in that type. When we talk about serial murderers or these kinds of things, it wasn't about the killing for Ed Gein. It was, they each got a single bullet wound. So who was Ed Gein? And we're going to talk about him for just a little bit, and then we're going to wrap it back up by coming back to this house of horrors, if you will. Here's a picture of Ed, which if he were anybody else, that would come off as kind of like a cool photo of your granddad, right? With the hat kind of cocked sideways, like you wouldn't know.
Edged up beard.
There he is walking as he's being like escorted around his property.
Mm.
to show him around. Okay, so let me tell you a little bit about him. Edward Theodore Gein was born in La Crosse County, Wisconsin on August 27th, 1906. So he was the youngest of two sons born to George and Augusta Gein. So his brother was named Henry. He was about, I think, 3 years older than Ed. So mom, Augusta, all right? You're going to find, I think, that the method of abuse or the verbiage used is very different, but we did do a series on, or a show on, Ed Kemper. This is another Ed who has a mother who's not doing right by her son, and then it's interesting to see kind of how they come up in the ways of the world. So Augusta, some sources will consider her religious or a very strictly practicing Christian. I would say not. I would say not even fanatical. It's really just not even actually Christian. I mean, like, she uses that as her basis of her beliefs, but then her actions do not. Her actions definitely betray that. Okay, so she preached to her sons frequently about basically the innate immorality of the world, the evils of drinking. Like, okay, that's fine, right? But that all women were naturally promiscuous by nature, and they were all instruments of the devil. The devil. We're going to talk toward the end. Brian has a list of essentially pop culture references that have gleaned inspiration from Ed Gein. And, I mentioned to him the other day that I think one that's never mentioned is Waterboy. But to be fair, Kathy Bates' character in Waterboy sounds very, very much like Ed Gein's mom when she's talking about women basically being the devil. They are innately immoral and promiscuous, and they will lead you down the wrong path of life. So every afternoon she read to them from the Bible, which also could be fine, right? But instead she always chose like passages from Revelation, all the hellfire and brimstone, damnation, like God's anger and wrath towards you only. That's the only thing she would kind of preach on with them. This only got worse as the years went on with the boys, okay? So their dad, George, worked as a carpenter. He worked as a firefighter. He worked as a tanner, like he would tan hides. That's interesting, as we know what goes on to, go on with Ed. He also owned a local grocery store, but he soon sold the business and moved the family to live on that 195-acre farm, the one that we referenced at the beginning of the show, in the town of Plainfield, Wisconsin, and that became their permanent residence, okay? So his dad has had a lot of these different jobs because he couldn't really hold one very well, all right? He was known to be a violent alcoholic. He regularly beat both of the boys. It's been noted, or Ed would say over the years, that his dad would beat him till he had ringing in his ears, almost every time. So mom, Augusta, took advantage of this isolation by turning any outsiders away that could potentially ever influence her son. In fact, the way this reads is more like they moved there because they wanted the farm or because dad couldn't hold the job. Everything else that I read actually cites that Augusta wanted to move them away to isolate them for the purpose of keeping them from having friendships or any outside influences other than her. So Ed Gein left the farm only to attend school, and this would be the same for his brother Henry. So they would leave, go to school, come right back. But when they were home from school, they would do chores around the farm. They became pretty handy. And so it says that, like, in the early days, Ed was a bit shy. Classmates and teachers say that he had some strange mannerisms, like he would laugh at random times that didn't necessarily make sense, as if he were kind of laughing at his own personal jokes that they weren't privy to. But Augusta would punish him whenever he tried to make friends, and she would do the same with his brother. So despite poor social development, he did pretty well in school. And they say that he was a pretty avid reader. So I think that this is a misconception as well. Like, it depends on who you talk to. So when you go back and look at interviews of people who knew him, either when he was younger or as an adult working on the farm, just as a grown man, he wasn't very, very bright, but he wasn't like super challenged in that way either. Like, he was fine. He did have it's described as a lesion or something on his tongue that caused him to have a bit of a lisp or talk a little bit differently. When you listen to him, he kind of sounds like a male Jodie Foster, kind of like he's got rocks in his mouth a little bit. But that's it. It's not terrible. And then his left eyelid had kind of a drooping prominence, like it's cited as like a growth or whatever. But that caused, and you can actually see it, I think, here. So that caused him to have a little bit of decreased vision in that eye when he was a child, because it seemed to cover up more of his actual eyeball at the time. But that was it. Nothing crazy. But kids are kids, and they were mean to him, and he got bullied about these kinds of things. Outside of that, it wasn't a horrible time in school for him. Just it probably wasn't quite the easiest. So in April of 1940, George, the dad, dies of heart failure. He was 66 years old. So Ed and his brother Henry really kind of ramp up their efforts around the house, doing the odd jobs, mending fences, helping with the animals, all these kinds of things. And they were generally considered pretty reliable and honest. The rest of the community did know them because despite their mother's efforts, they did actually meet people. They did know who people were. They both worked as handymen, but Ed actually, for some extra money, frequently would babysit for neighbors, which sounds horrible. We don't have any like definite evidence that he hurt children as an adult, and we're going to get into why that is. But at the time, it said that he really just enjoyed the company of children, not in like a weird way, but like he related more to kids when he was an older adolescent than he did doing things with adults. So Henry, however, now they're getting a little bit older, and his brother Henry begins dating a divorced mother of two. I'm sure his mother was ready to come unglued on this one, and had plans to move in with her. Okay. He worried about his brother's attachment to their mom. So I'm sure he could see that Ed, as the years was going by, was becoming increasingly attached to mommy dearest over there. Okay. So it didn't matter how abusive she was or scolding or any of the things she said or did to him. Ed was almost like immortalizing her. Like she was becoming an idol to him. Whereas Henry was like, oh, I'm getting out of here. I'm going away. I want the farthest, I don't want anything to do with any of this stuff. But because he's a brother, and he wasn't necessarily trying to be, the wise sage of Ed, he would just, say how he felt about their mother. So he would speak ill of their mother pretty frequently in front of Ed, and Ed would act shocked. He would act hurt. He did not like it. So after quite a bit of this, on May 16th of 1944, Ed was burning some like marsh vegetation, it's described as, on the property. And the fire got out of control, which drew the attention of the local fire department. But by the end of the day, the fire was finally extinguished, and the firefighters were gone. Ed reported Henry as missing. So he calls everybody back saying he can't find his brother. But they all take lanterns and flashlights out there, and a search party gets together, and they're looking for Henry, who's 43 at this time. So this means that Ed's around 40 years old, okay? And they find Henry lying face down, dead. Apparently, he had been dead for quite some time. And it's interesting because while Ed is the one who called the search party trying to find Henry, he's also the one who led them straight to Henry's body. And it appeared that the cause of death was, they initially considered it heart failure, or asphyxiation, I think, was actually ultimately written on his death certificate. But he was not burned. So he did not, perish in the fire in that way. So they're saying that he probably just, too much smoke, and he, even though they're outside and couldn't get away, and he died that way. But it's later noted that there were bruises on his head. So a biographer, Harold Schechter, said that Henry had bruises on his head, and police dismissed the possibility of foul play. And the county coroner, like I said, listed asphyxiation as the cause of death. So the authorities accepted the fact that it was probably an accident. They didn't really conduct any official investigation. An autopsy was not performed. And I think that people kind of underestimated Ed a lot. This happens more than a couple of times. And so when he says it was an accident, so be it. It was an accident. what else could have happened? It's not like his brother would have done this, right? Not Ed, the farmhand or the handyman over here. So later, moving forward, like where we started this show about like Bernice Warden being dead. So when they were interviewing Ed about the death of Bernice Warden in 1957, there was a state investigator named Joe Wilimowski, and he brought up questions about Henry's death, all those years prior. And someone else, George Arndt, who studied the case, wrote that in retrospect, it's possible and is actually likely that Henry's death was kind of the Cain and Abel aspect of this case. But either way, so now we've got dad's dead and brother's dead. So now we've just got Ed and Mama. Right. As I think he would love. Now, a little note, I want to tell you just another little piece of how Mom acted about things. When it's kind of cited that when her oldest son, Henry, was born, she was appalled. She didn't really want any more children after him. And then when she did get pregnant, she just hoped, maybe it would be a girl, which is interesting because she seems to have a hatred of women, or does she? Is it that she doesn't want them near her sons, right? But instead she had Ed, and she was not thrilled about that as well. So these are just some things that the challenges they had from literally the moment they were born. So now we've got Ed and Mom alone, but Augusta suffered a pretty debilitating stroke not too long after Henry died. And so Ed was devoted to taking care of her. She was, like I said, pretty incapacitated. And so he really became the sole caretaker 24 hours a day of his mom. In 1945, he later recounted that he and his mom visited a man named Smith. This is just a side story, but again, it shows you a little bit about his mother. And Smith lived nearby, and they were going to purchase some straw, right? Like hay, right? And so according to Ed, his mom witnessed Smith beating a dog, and there was a lady inside the house. And the lady inside the house came out and was yelling at Smith to quit beating the dog. But instead, he does this until the dog actually perishes. But Ed's mother was not nearly upset about this horrible beating of this animal. Instead, she was extremely upset that the woman in the house was not married to Smith, that they were not married, and he had a woman in his home and she did not belong there. And so I guess she told Ed that the woman had no business being there. She called the lady Smith's harlot, and they left. Yeah, let's bring that one back. I like harlot.
Okay.
They're tramping there while we're at it.
Tramp.
It's a fun one. So they left, but Mom suffers a second stroke soon after this, and her health deteriorates really quickly after the second stroke, and she dies on December 29th of 1945 at the age of 67, okay? So they say that Ed sobbed almost in a childlike manner over his mother's death. So he was devastated by it, and he, meaning Ed, actually said, quote, that he had lost his only friend and his one true love, and he was absolutely alone in the world. Okay? So Ed had come to idolize his mother over the years. Her demeanor, abuse, her demands affected Ed completely differently from his brother, which is what I think is interesting. And we don't have to get too far in the weeds with that, but, we often talk whenever we have covered cases with a serial offender, and then we say sometimes like, okay, and no grace given to him. Usually it's a man that we seem to cover, but no grace given to him. But also let's look at what his childhood was like. How does that wire your brain? And because it can. But here we have a perfect example of apples and oranges. Henry and Ed grew up with the same parents, and it sounds like for the most part suffered the same abuse. It's not like one was necessarily favored. But obviously their lives, they took this and went somewhere totally different. So we always go back to a chicken and an egg. Which came first? Was Ed just wired differently from the go? Did he suffer some issues from some head trauma from dad beating him? There are some other things we'll talk about that happened to him as a child as well that we can sometimes see on when you look at almost like a flow chart or a list of characteristics or incidences in childhood when you look at later a serial killer. And Ed has a few of those things that his brother may not have had. So it is kind of interesting. Either way, Ed holds on to the family farm, and he just kind of gets money from odd jobs here and there. He boarded up the rooms, though, used by his mom. So soon after she died, he just kind of systematically over time, like, boarded up her bedroom, then the sitting room, or the parlor or whatever, right? Like, all the rooms that she would use, he boards up to never go into again. And they remain pristine, almost like a museum, okay? But the rest of the house became just squalor. So from all accounts, it looks like, here, I think I have a photo. Here's a detective in what I believe is the kitchen there. But just more and more things, because he had a smaller and smaller space to live as time went on. Okay. Yeah. So he lives there in this small room next to the kitchen, and he had really kind of like limited himself at this point down to about 2 rooms. And around this time, he becomes interested in reading pulp magazines, adventure stories, but particularly those involving cannibals or Nazi atrocities. You've got to remember the time. We're now in the mid to late 40s, okay? So we got World War II. So he actually read often from pornographic magazines, but also from medical textbooks. But he developed a fascination with Elsie. I feel like you say Koch. It's Koch. It's German. That would be right. I think that's what that would be. But so let me tell you who she is real quickly. Okay, sorry. She was a German war criminal known as the Witch of Buchenwald. The inmates of the camp called her this due to her suspected cruelty toward prisoners, but she was nicknamed the Beast of Buchenwald, the Queen of Buchenwald, the Red Witch of Buchenwald, the Butcher Widow, and the Bitch of Buchenwald. Evidently because of her egregious and alleged actions, including that she had selected tattooed prisoners for death in order to fashion lampshades and other items from their skins. And because of this, her 1947 U.S. military commission court trial received worldwide media attention. So everyone knew about these atrocities, meaning Ed Gein was reading a lot of, material about her. And so he's reading things that she did, which sounds like some of the things he did. Okay. So I want you to also hear a little bit about when he was a kid with his brother. When they were in school, I told you a little bit about his history with like his eye or his tongue, and the kids kind of made fun a little bit, but it wasn't horrible. But when Ed would come home from school crying that kids had made fun of him, his father would beat him. And that's when he would beat him until he said that his ears rang. But his mom, like I told you, would scold her sons about sex. But basically, she scolded them that sex even just existed at all. And she would tell them that sex, even for procreation, was horrendous, but that was necessary. But it should absolutely not be used outside of procreation. And this was essentially the message of Ed and Henry's childhood, was sex is bad, sex is an abomination, any kind of sex. I mean, she almost ventured on the fact that even for procreation, it was a bad thing, but just that sex is bad, sex is bad, sex is bad, right? But this is like almost beaten into them quite literally. But once Ed snuck out back and his parents were slaughtering a pig out in the barn, and he was around 10 years old at this time, and he does recall having this certain feeling when they hung the pig up and opened it up, as they were starting to, he talks about blood and he talks about their arms like inside the animal. And he had a feeling he had never felt. And you realize later he's talking about having like an orgasm for the first time. So that happened. Another time when he was 12. So he's getting a little bit older now, like in terms of this kind of thing. And he's 12. But his mom caught him masturbating in the bathtub, excuse me. And she grabbed him by his testicles and told him that meaning like his stuff is the curse of man, is the curse of all man, even having that. And she demanded that he and his brother remain virgins for their life, and that that's the only way they could remain loyal to her. So Ed never spoke on any incestuous activity. He never said anything sexual that took place with his mother. But psychiatrists have gone back now to say, like, maybe not, but there's a decent likelihood that something, was going on there in the way that he reacted to things. But that's kind of caught you up a little bit more about his childhood, and then leading up to the deaths of his brother, dad, mom, and then his reading material, all to include, pornography, medical textbooks of like doctor anatomy stuff, right? And then the Nazi stuff. So, oh, boy. And here we thought he wasn't cultured because he didn't have a phone and Wi-Fi. Yeah. So at around 18 months after his mom's death, this is when things really start to change. And this is what leads us up to where we started our story with his house of horrors. Okay. So he said that he had such extreme loneliness, and he would have these kind of strange visions, and that he began just longing for companionship, for company. And he was visiting the cemetery, but eventually he had the urge to rob graves of the deceased. He wanted to feel closer to his mother. So he started making like these nighttime visits to the graveyard. And as he did this, he would describe this as he would say like he was either in a haze or a daze. This is how he would for years recount all of this. Okay. And so, but he said, like, for instance, he may be grave robbing, like but he's not taking jewelry, you guys. He's taking like bodies or parts of bodies. And he would say that if he was there, and let's say he's even, digging and using his crowbar to pry open the casket and getting whatever he wants to retrieve out of there, he would say that if he like had a moment of alertness or came out of what he called his haze or his daze, that he would stop what he was doing, put it back, and leave empty-handed. Now, if you believe what he says, that happens dozens of times as well. He also goes to the cemetery. He recounts over 40-something, 50 times, like that many different visits. So when you think about all of the things that they found in his home, this doesn't mean, I'm not trying to make it better, but it doesn't mean that he was out there killing all of the people to procure the items to make the chair or the belt or the lampshade, right? Almost all of it came from grave robbing. So I think that my misconception going into studying on Ed Gein was that I just always hear that, they say he's such a prolific serial killer. And so I think it's because of the nature of what he did with all this skin, obviously makes it crazy, just wild, right? Like to see the pictures and to understand what he did is so bizarre. But he wasn't like like BTK or what. He wasn't out there doing this stuff to people while they're alive or killing all these people. All right. So sometimes he would get the whole body and he would just transport them in his car. Sometimes he would, like I said, either be in a hurry in this haze or whatever, or only need, let's say, a leg. And he would take what he needs and close it all back up and leave. He said sometimes he would actually get home with whatever he had taken, feel guilt, and return it. So, like, here you go, like a little piece to that. At the beginning of the show, we started with Bernice Warden, right? Like going missing from the general store. There was blood there and the cash register was gone. He later tells the cops, he was like, oh, no, I didn't want the money. I think there's only like $40 in it. And I think that when they found it, he had not taken the money out of it. He said he wanted to see how it worked. He wasn't sure how a machine like that actually worked. So he wanted to kind of like tinker around with it. Yeah. And he had plans to return it, which maybe I'm naive. I actually kind of believe that because like that wasn't the nature. Theft really wasn't his crime anyway. So in trying to he would say that his goal was kind of when he takes these people or their body parts from the cemetery, his goal was to kind of make his mother alive. Like his obsession is now she's gone and it's to kind of get her back. And then that in his brain kind of shifts into a few different things. But in trying to make her alive, he kind of transcends that into actually kind of making a suit. If you've tuned in for the Ed Gein case, this is what you're tuning in for, I'm quite sure. He wanted to make a suit basically to crawl in. Sometimes he would say that it was like to be inside her womb, to be back with her, inside her, like in that way. But sometimes he would say it was to be her. Mm. He wanted to be her. Mm-hmm. He said that outside of masturbation, he never had sex with the bodies because they smelled too bad. There are psychiatrists who go back to say, oh, I bet he probably did. Some say, oh, maybe he didn't. What I've learned is it doesn't matter with the sexual component or like the urge of sex with these bodies. You know, we talk about the different drive behind killings sometimes. And so with the sexual motivation, with him using all of these bodies for all of these things, he's still considered a necrophiliac, even if he never, you know, had sex with them, because that was the desire behind all of this. So, but I mean, he's right. He said they smell too bad. So yeah, he's right. So let me tell you a little bit about this skin suit. Okay, let's see what we have pictures of. First of all, here's Mom. This is Augusta, who looks pleasant on the surface, if you didn't know all the things that I just told you about her. Mm. Okay, if you feel the need to shield your eyes, I'm going to show you some kind of gross stuff here. So this photo, here we have an example. The top there is the nipple belt. The bottom left is one of the face masks. The bottom right is quite obviously the skull that was made into a bowl, which, I mean, if it wasn't actually from a real person, it's kind of, I don't want to say cool. But I mean, it looks just like I told you, if you go to the Halloween store and get a decoration, like that's the stuff that you buy. And those things that look like hands, that's exactly what they are. If I can, I'll put them on Instagram. Because it's way more, let me see if this photo shows it better. Kind of. It's a little clearer. If you think of a baseball mitt, and again, for you audio listeners, I will put everything I can on Instagram on the Andrea Uplate page there, okay? So you can see these photos. But I'm just showing now what looks like like leather work gloves almost, if you kind of saw it from a distance. That is the skin of, you know, someone's hands front and back, but he has sewn them to where you don't really see the markings of the stitching unless you look closely, because it's around the edge of all of the fingers and around the edge of the hand. So to me, it's reminiscent of almost like an old school, the way they would stitch like a baseball mitt.
Yeah.
But the stitching is just really tiny, small stitching. And I mean, obviously this is heinous. It's a terrible thing that he's done, but the work is there. I mean, you know what I'm, to be fair, like this, that's not easy it's not easy to skin a deer, much less skin a human, and keep things intact and do that. So, let me show you another photo here. I think this is just a compilation of some of his items. So just know that before I put it up here. There's another one of the masks. This is almost in like a box or a drawer. Okay. So if it looks like there's some, I don't know what that black stuff is. I think that's just part of the drawer. But you see a mask, and then you see a fork there. And if you look closely, that fork is on the edge of like bone. So it's coming out of a bone as a utensil there. So that gives you a little idea. There's Ed again, walking around. He's just kind of yucking it up with the cups there. Okay. So when he put on this, I feel like we should play some, when he put on this skin suit, okay?
Careful.
I know. I'm just, here, I got this for you guys, okay? Okay, maybe I don't. Why can't I find it? Either way. Okay, so when he would put on the skin suit, he would, there it is. I just feel like it's very important.
I know what you're doing.
All right. It would have, I told you the breasts included. it almost looks like, if you think of like a missed out fire or like any, it's kind of wild that he was able to do that and keep it like it is. And he put straps, like they had ropes in them attached, right? So he would tie it tightly around his body, and then he would slip on the leggings that he sewed together like those gloves with human skin. And then he would he would take those gloves that I just showed you and put those on his hands. And then he would take the mask, and put the mask on his face. I'm going to show you a different one, so don't get creeped out. And so now he's got his legs covered, his hands covered, his body, his face. And then often he would put his mother's clothes on top of that. And he says that he would dance around the house, kind of sway to music. And that if the moon was just right, he'd go outside around the house looking up at the moon.
Okay. That makes sense. Okay.
Who else likes to look at the moon?
No.
Brian, who likes to look at the moon?
I like to look at the moon, but this is in reference to pop culture.
Okay.
I love the moon.
But that is essentially what it comes down to that Ed was doing. So let me tell you this, when he, and we'll talk about all the references in a moment with the movies, and obviously you're already, I'm sure gleaning or, bridging the gap there with those. But so what he would do though is start to look at the obituaries. And as soon as he would see that someone had died, they needed to be usually in their 40s or 50s. He did prefer them to look like his mother. And they had to be of a certain size, like a little plumper, a little rounder, again, to resemble his mother. And he was pretty slight in frame. He was a pretty small fella. So it's not that he needed them so much bigger to fit him. But he will basically say he, for the most part, didn't get rid of anyone or didn't take anyone's skin that didn't look like his mom. So that's how he would kind of do this stuff. So the artifacts that they photographed at the state crime laboratory, they said that they, quote, decently disposed of them. So that's why I say, like, be careful when you Google a lot of photos. I mean, if you do that, a lot of the stuff isn't legitimately stuff they found there. It's like artist renderings of that stuff. But when he was questioned, Ed told investigators that between 1947 and 1952, he had made as many as 40 nocturnal visits to 3 local graveyards to exhume recently buried bodies while he was in a daze-like state. On about 30 of those visits, he said he came out of the daze, like I told you, right, while he was in the cemetery, and would leave the grave in good order and leave and get home empty-handed. He admits to stealing from 9 graves, but this is where it gets kind of interesting on the investigator part. They're talking amongst themselves, and they're like, there's no way. Like, that's too much work. It's too difficult. There's no way this one guy was able to do this. And again, he wasn't very big. They didn't think he would have the strength or stamina that it took to dig into all of these graves. And so they go to these locations and they go to where he's saying, oh, I can show you where I got into the grave sites, which is interesting, by the way, because if he was in such a daze or a haze when he did it, he sure has a sharp memory about it later. So Alan Wilimowski of the State Crime Lab participated in opening 3 test graves identified by Ed Gein. The caskets were inside wooden boxes. The top boards ran crossway. The tops of these boxes were about 2 feet below the surface in pretty sandy soil. So where they are up in Wisconsin, they're near the water. A lot of the soil is sandy, okay? And so Ed says that he had robbed the graves soon after the funerals while the graves were not completed. That also, think about this though, he's getting them fresh because he wants them fresh. Also, I feel like it probably is less eyes on him or less because it's not showing such a disturbance in soil. So it's not really causing attention to what he's doing. So the test graves were exhumed because authorities were uncertain as to whether or not he was capable of single-handedly doing this. But they were found as Ed described. One was empty. Another was empty but contained a few bones and his own crowbar. And the final casket that they kind of tested out had most of the body missing, but Ed had returned rings and some of the body parts that he didn't want to use. And that made his confessions corroborated, as you can imagine. Okay. So, excuse me. So there was a 16-year-old whose parents were friends of Ed, and they attended baseball games and movies with him. Remember, he got along in the neighborhood. Like, I mean, he was an odd duck. And literally, that's what they said. They said, he was a little odd, but no one said, oh, he made the hair on the back of my neck stand up, or I was frightened around him. I think he probably just seemed like a kind of a solo guy out working on his farm, just kind of an odd dude. But there was never like a crossword about him. And they say that he was kind and he was pretty trustworthy and he would help you out if you needed anything. Nobody really had any issues with him. So the kid, though, had gone over there and got a little freaked out and reported that Ed had shrunken heads in his home. But Ed had told the kid, oh, yeah, let me show you. And he shows them to him. But he said that they were relics sent over by his cousin who had served in the Philippines during World War II. So he actually, you find out, like, showed these shrunken heads to more than a couple of people over different times and said, oh, aren't these crazy? My cousin sent these back from the Philippines. Now, we also know that in some of his readings, remember, I told you he was a pretty prolific reader as a child, and then as an adult, his subject matter varied. But he would read about shrunken heads and how, like, different cultures and tribes would, like, the art of shrinking of the heads. So it sounds like he actually was attempting all of that. So when the police kind of learn about this and kind of get into it, they were determined to be human facial skins, that they were the skins that had been peeled from the corpses and used by him as his masks. Okay. So remember I told you about the deputies that got to the house when they first were trying to find Bernice Warden when we started the show, and the one sheriff who had bumped into her thought it was a deer hanging. It was actually her body, all the terrible things. And he got sick from it. So he evidently assaulted Ed when he went in to take him in for questioning, banged his head and face pretty severely into a brick wall. And as a result, Ed's initial confession was ruled inadmissible. But that guy, that same sheriff's deputy, actually, I think he was the sheriff. He died of heart failure in 1968 at 43 years old. It was before Ed Gein's trial. And many who knew him said that ever since stumbling upon that home, he'd been traumatized by it. The horror of the crimes, just he couldn't sleep. He was not doing well. And then he also had the fear of having to testify, especially about assaulting Ed. And they, like, relatives or friends of his, think that that's part and parcel, contributed to his death. But he was 43. So a little bit about the trial on November 21st, 1957, which it's interesting how this worked out for Ed. He was arraigned on one count of first-degree murder. Because remember, out of all of those skins, all of those bones, nails, all of it, we only for sure have 2 murders, because we have Mary Hogan, the one who was she was a barkeep, and then we have Barbara Warden. Okay. And he admitted to both of those pretty quickly. But he was on one count of first-degree murder in the county court, and he pled not guilty by reason of insanity. He was diagnosed with schizophrenia, which I would just say forget that right now. It was the 40s, 50s, 60s. Everyone got it. It's like Oprah is out there dishing out, you get schizophrenia, Oftentimes we've learned now that wasn't the case. He was found mentally incompetent, thus unfit for trial. He was sent to the Central State Hospital for the Criminally Insane. It's now called the Dodge Correctional Institution. And that was like a maximum security facility that was, but a mental hospital. He was later transferred to a different state hospital in Madison, Wisconsin. But in 1968, so almost 10 years have gone by. Okay. So he was found not guilty by reasons of insanity, served time in this mental institution. In 1968, doctors determined he's now mentally able to confer with counsel and participate in his defense. So it's interesting though, right? Like, we can try again now. Like, now you're ready, right? So the trial began on November 7th of 68. It lasted 1 week. A psychiatrist testified that Ed had told him he didn't know whether the killing of Bernice Warden was intentional or accidental. He told him that while he examined a gun in her store, the weapon discharged and killed her. He claimed to have had not aimed it at her and didn't even remember anything else that happened that morning. It's crazy. He must have been in a haze, like he likes to say. At the request of the defense, though, his trial was held without a jury. He was found guilty. So get this, y'all. He was found guilty on November 14th, and a second trial dealt with his sanity. So after testimony by doctors for the prosecution and defense, they rule him not guilty by reason of insanity. So they deem him guilty of the murder and then not guilty by reason of insanity. And they order him to be committed again to Central State Hospital for the criminally insane. So he spent the rest of his life in a mental hospital. And the judge said that, quote, due to prohibitive costs, he was tried for only the one murder of Miss Warden, even though he admitted to killing Mary Hogan. So he wasn't even tried for her murder because it was expensive.
Mm-hmm.
I guess that's true.
That's some Depression era.
Yeah, that's true.
Thinking.
So Ed's house, the outbuildings, and the whole 195-acre property were appraised at about $4,700 at the time. His possessions were scheduled to be auctioned. So get this. They're going to be auctioned. This would be 58. So this was just like the year after he first was taken into custody. But there were some rumors around town that someone was potentially going to buy it up to turn it into essentially, a circus. I mean, like to come on, let's come see, like a museum. What am I trying to say? What's
like a house of horrors?
Yeah, I mean, I guess a museum, but either way, so like a paid exhibit. Mm-hmm. And so when those rumors started circulating, the people of the town did not like this. Again, you guys, like 700 people in town. They did not like for the one thing to be known for to be this horrific thing. So early on the morning of March 20th, the house was destroyed by a fire. The house was destroyed by a fire, and a deputy marshal reported that a garbage fire had been set 75 feet from the house by a cleaning crew who was given the task of disposing the trash. But the fire didn't spread along the ground from that location to the house, and so arson was suspected. But the cause of the fire was never really determined, and it's possible that the fire was not considered much of an urgent matter to Fire Chief Frank Warden, son of, remember, Bernice Warden, who worked at the general store. Mm-hmm. So when Ed learned of the incident while he was in detention, he shrugged and said, well, that's just as well. So Ed's sedan, he had a Ford sedan, and that's what he would use, obviously, to haul the bodies back and forth from the cemeteries, was sold at a public auction for $760 to Carnival Sideshow operator Bunny Gibbons. And Bunny charged carnival goers 25 cents a piece to see it. So here's a photo of everyone looking at it before it was auctioned off. Mm-hmm. Oh, y'all see there, Sonny? That's a car for you right there. We're going to charge 25 cents a piece. Step right up. Let's see. What else do we have if I haven't shown you? But that's the car. And everyone says that Ed was a model prisoner the entire time. He was said to be polite, kind, helpful. He didn't have one instance of any kind of disciplinary action against him the whole time he was there in the mental facility. So in terms of like serial killers and the definitions of those and all of that, that is, I believe, defined as 3 or more killings greater than a
certain.
Yeah, I've got it pulled up. I want to say.
Some people call it a cooling off time or whatever. But
yeah. But like kind of, more than a month. Yeah. So 3 or more with more than a month, because otherwise they classify it as spree, right? So 3 or more in more than a month. So maybe. We don't know. We don't know if he has more than the 2 that we do know about, and it was almost indeterminate because the amount of carnage at his house, but he could prove that he was robbing the graves, and so the thought is that when he shot Barbara Warden and Mary Hogan, it's because the stuff that he had at his house, he was kind of getting a little tired of robbing the graves, and those were getting a little bit too old. So he had a lot of the indicators, though, the physical abuse, potentially sexual abuse from his mother. We don't really know about that. He did have a head injury. We know that his dad boxed him. I mean, his dad beat him in the head. That was his method of punishing him, was beating him in the head until his ears rang. And those were Ed's own words. We also know there was an incident when he was a little boy that he would tell people about, where he fell down a big flight of stairs, tumbled. He hit his head. And he said that he always felt like he had the feeling of being pushed from behind him, but that he was okay because as soon as he came to and looked up, his mom was at the top of the stairs and helped him.
But yeah.
But we have a lot of head injuries. So Keith Jesperson wound up killing a whole bunch of women. He, as in high school, fell off of, he climbed the rope to the top in gym class, right? All the way, I forget how high, it was very, very tall. Fell off from the top and cracked that skull. Obviously, again, that doesn't make you a serial killer, but I'm saying when you look at them, you can pull a lot of commonalities between them. We have the shame factor, sexual suppression and shame from mom. We know that his first sexual experience was with, in watching his parents slaughter a pig. Yeah. But in terms of the triad that we talk about all the time, I mean, give it as much weight as you will. He did not have bedwetting. He did not have animal mutilation. And he really didn't have any fire starting. I mean, he maybe started the fire that led to, that he wanted to blame on his brother's death, but that kind of had more of a motive there. It wasn't just like for funsies. Yeah. Last little bit here at 6 a.m. on July 27th of 1984, with 4 attendants present, Ed was laid to rest in Plainfield Cemetery. So he died at the Mendota Mental Hospital Health Institute. He had some pneumonia and things secondary to lung cancer on July 26th of 1984 at the age of 77. And for some reason, I don't picture him alive in 84. You know what I mean? Like, I picture him so far away. And when he was laid to rest in Plainfield Cemetery, it was right next to his mother. I don't know. I don't like how I feel about that. Over the years, you do have people who have like chipped away pieces from his gravestone until the stone itself was stolen in the year 2000. They recovered it in Seattle at some point, and they put it in a storage facility out at the sheriff's department. He is interred between his parents and his brother in Plainfield Cemetery, and his gravesite is now unmarked. There are, and I'm not going to get into it because, to be fair, I'm just tired of talking, but there are, he's potentially implicated in, he admits to, and we have proof of 2. There are potentially 5 to 7 more that people talk about. There was like a 15-year-old girl that was babysitting nearby that wound up going missing under some strange circumstances, but like none of her, like her, literally her body, was found in his belongings. There's one lady who says that when she was doing some work in her kitchen, she felt a presence, turned around, and Ed was standing there. She knew him. And he said, "Oh, you had a string, something hanging from here. I was going to help you cut that." And then he said, "You look so much like my mother." And so there were a couple of instances of that, but I think her husband or someone came home. So it's like, there's a few things where it's kind of like, ooh, would this have been more, or had it been more than we know about? But that, my friends, is the story of, oh gosh, I see 55 comments that I've missed. Just such a weird one. But again, it's like, I don't know. I'm going to let you talk about the references to pop culture now him, but I go back and forth on that one. Obviously, we know that he killed 2 women for sure, if nothing else, and that's horrible. And it's horrible, desecrate, a grave. But I don't know. I don't know that he ran around killing 15 people. Like,
well, that's because we're comparing him to,
I don't know,
other people who have, yeah.
Well, and that's another thing, real quick before you do this. The things that Brian's about to talk about, they didn't have then. So unfortunately, we have become quite desensitized to a lot of things. So if you heard this story today, everybody would be like, "Oh my God, that's crazy." And it would be national news, and it would eat up everybody's TVs for about 5 days maybe. And they'd move on to the next crazy story, but we've seen shows, with movies like Saw exist, right? Like they didn't have this stuff. So like to hear about this, they talk about it now still, like, and are just traumatized in their town from having had this happen next door. Okay, go ahead.
Well, there's already one reference earlier, which is Silence of the Lambs.
Well, yeah,
it's probably
the best one.
Well, actually, I would. Yeah, that's definitely the best one.
Mm-hmm.
And just like when you were talking about putting on the skin suit and stuff, very similar to Buffalo Bill. But probably I wouldn't say the most famous, but one of the earlier famous movies was 1960's Psycho.
Oh yeah, well, the whole mother component.
The whole thing about the mother, and then spoiler alert, I think in the end. Wait, are we gonna watch it?
Oh yeah, I don't care about that.
Yeah. In the end, I think he is dressed up like his mom. If I remember, or he'd been dressed up like his mom during the killing.
Another link there that you wouldn't know, because I don't think I touched on it in the story, is that in Psycho, doesn't he have like conversations with his mom?
Probably. I don't know. I'm sure somebody in the comments will.
Yeah, I think he essentially has like conversations with her to himself, and Ed did as well.
It seems like then you get into the 70s is when movies get a little. I don't know, man. 70s are rough. All those like grindhouse movies, whatever. But in 1972, there's one called 3 on a Meat Hook. Yeah, but I think it's a farmer. He lures some girls in, and does things, and then skins.
Is it like? Is it sexual? Don't make me say it.
Oh, these are all horror movies.
Oh, okay. Well, it just sounded really weird. And they lured the girls in.
That's the name of it. That's how they describe it. It's terrible.
Okay.
1974 was Deranged. I think that one got a little more attention.
I read that. Did you see what that was about?
Yeah, and I think that one actually even shows a scene of a woman upside down, like.
Oh, like dressed out like a deer.
Dressed out like a deer, yeah.
Well, that happened. I think Michael mentioned it too. The Robert Pickens, Willie Pickens, Robert Pickens, the pig farmer killer guy.
Yeah.
He did that to dispose of the women, though. But yeah.
And then same year, 1974, is Texas Chainsaw Massacre, which I saw when I was like 9 years old. I tell the same story about every 3 months because it still bothers me. But Tobe Hooper, the director, was 5 years old the first time he heard a story about Ed Gein. And that just stuck in his brain. And then eventually he creates Texas Chainsaw Massacre and models a little bit of that.
Yeah.
Then 1991, Silence of the Lambs. 93 is Ed and His Dead Mother. Starring.
Kind of on the nose, wouldn't you say?
Starring Steve Buscemi.
Oh, he's the best.
It's a what they describe as a dark comedy. Then you get into other pop culture. There were trading cards in 1992 called True Crime Trading Cards. A sealed box of them go for about $140 now.
Should we start that? Should that be our merch?
Oh, well, in 92, that was a big deal. Like, they tried to make laws against it and wanted to outlaw
Well, I say start that. We could maybe do a variation of that sometime.
Oh, yes. I see what you're saying. And the second series of those trading cards was number 81 was Ed. And that one goes for however many dollars now. In 2000, there was a movie called In the Light of the Moon originally, but then I think they renamed it or re-released it under a different name, which is just...
Oh, that's what you were referencing then, huh?
No, I'm sorry. No, I skipped because my notes are written.
Oh, okay.
Sorry about that. I forgot there was some more recent movies in the last few years. When you said that In the Light of the Moon, I was wondering when I was pulling it up.
Yeah.
Like, what? That's kind of a random name for a movie.
Yeah.
But now you know.
Yeah.
2007, Ed Gein, the Butcher of Plainfield. Side note is one of the actors in there is Michael Berryman. His character's name's Jack, but he's the principal in the Motley Crue Smoking in the Boys Room video.
Oh, okay.
He's the guy that's in a lot of the horror movies. I don't know. Everybody knows who he is. 2010, there was an Ed Gein musical, in case you were curious. And then I don't know what year it was. The band Mudvayne they created a song or whatever, wrote a song called "Nothing to Gain." It's not.
Sorry.
The lyrics are not good.
That's kind of
It's
funny
not a
little
positive
bit.
song. It's not.
So,
and then there. Go ahead.
yeah.
Sling Blade. Carl from Sling Blade has nothing to do with it.
Well, he looked
not
like
even
him.
Inspired by the look. Yeah.
So Psycho, I know we touched on the movie, but the book was written in 1959 by Robert Bloch.
Mm-hmm.
So it's interesting. He wrote that in 1959. Of course, it went on to be adapted into a movie. But he actually went for high school, Lincoln Center for the Arts. That was 2 hours from Plainfield, and he grew up all around Wisconsin near Plainfield. And so around the same time, I think he graduated high school in like the late 30s. Mm-hmm. Meaning, he would have been whatever in his 30s or 40s when this took place near his hometown. So he probably really had heard a lot of information about that and news about it and stuff. Yeah. So it's kind of interesting.
Mm-hmm. And I guess the more recent, whatever that series is on Netflix or whatever.
Of
Ed.
So sorry. Oh, yes. And so the most recently, so there have been a couple of different like Netflix series called Monster about Ed Gein. Mm-hmm. But the newest one just came out, I think, on October 4th or so, like within the past week.
Like that, yeah.
And they've got Charlie, what is it? Hunham. Charlie Hunnam is playing Ed Gein. And I will tell you this. I haven't watched it. And there's two reasons. One, because he just looks like himself to me. He doesn't look like Ed Gein, and I think that would bug me. But also, and I listened to it today for a clip just to see if what people were talking about was true. In prep for this case, I'm listening to old Ed Gein interviews and, reading as much as I can. And the comments are from people who have seen the newest Netflix, the Charlie Hunnam one. I'm going to get butchered for pronouncing his name like that. They say, why did he sound like Mickey Mouse? Or why did he portray Ed Gein's voice like that? And so I was like, what are they talking about? And I go back and listen. And then I listened to an interview with him today. He was the guy in Sons of Anarchy, guys. And he says, and this was a little bit frustrating, but he said that he made his voice that way. And he called himself brave for doing so. He said, I thought it was quite brave or maybe courageous of himself as an actor to do this. Because he really had to take Ed's, like, who he was. And he thought he was really trying to be a woman for his mother. So he made him sound like he was a woman to be who he was. I don't know. None of it's accurate. So, like, no one asked you to be the psychologist on the case. Act like the man.
You have a recording of a guy. Once you mimic that. You know what I mean? That is because that's the big criticism, right?
Yeah, the big criticism is like, why does he sound like that? Because it doesn't. That's not how Ed sounds at all.
I mean, he probably couldn't do it. He probably couldn't do that accent.
Yeah. Yeah, he's got a really deep, kind of gravelly voice. The real Ed Gein, and so, but that was interesting. So I haven't seen the new one, but it just came out. If you guys are interested.
I don't mean to switch gears, but Tyler says friends are friends, pals are pals, bud is fighting words, and buddies sleep together. Remember, we've been trying to figure out why.
Oh, but they seem offended.
They do.
Okay.
Go ahead.
May I take a poll?
Let's do it.
Okay. Women in the chats, I want to hear your answers as well, but I'm kind of targeting the men here because I want to hear your... it's at least been twice.
Yes. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And one with someone that we know and one with someone we don't know. Mm-hmm. That we've been to a place, let's say it's kind of late, maybe we're downtown, go listen to some music or whatever. And the latest one, let's say, someone complimented a skirt. I said, oh, thank you. But grown women can just see past things, whatever. So, oh, thanks. Keep walking, right? Mm-hmm. Go to the restroom. I come back. As I'm passing, I have to pass that same person that I don't know, who's with a group of his friends. And his friend made reference at something. And I said, oh, hey, excuse me. I was like, excuse me, buddy. excuse me, buddy. I was just trying to be like polite, not be rude, but also like not trying to engage in conversation, right? So, excuse me, buddy, like kind of, and make my way through. But as I'm doing so, he says, you know, buddy, and his friend looks at him and they seem super pissed. This happened at a bar a few months ago. Same thing. Ran into someone that I did know, and I said, you know, oh well, hey, buddy. And so I was like, okay, I don't know why I will quit saying it, but I'm not sure why it makes me feel mad. What do you
just go back to it? I can't say it on here.
Yeah, be careful. Be careful. Nothing.
Yeah, that's why I assumed it must be like, now it's just a term like, oh, you don't call me that. Call you whatever I want to. Punk.
So Tyler says Buddy's fine. It's not rude. Well, here's the deal. I know it's not actually rude, but I don't know why they're getting like offended or mad about it. Michael says woman to man, Buddy. That dude is too sensitive and likely sits to pee. Bud on how you say it is fighting words. That makes sense, and that would be from a man, right?
Yeah. Hey, buddy, how's it going? Like, and you have no beef, no problems. Like,
and I think if you said it, they wouldn't have gotten mad. I feel like when I said it.
Yeah, I don't know. That's some strange stuff. Some work.
Men get mad when you call them sir. I don't know. Okay, well, I don't know.
I don't know, but when you get time at some point, Michael Hendricks put a quote up there. My friend Dan.
Like hang on.
Don't read it out loud. Sorry. It sounds like something like my dad would have said or something. I don't know.
Marine said, wife and I call her son Buddy. Well, same. I say Buddy all the time. I would say it to my dog. I would say it to the kids. Michael said you're better off not talking to men. I don't mean to. I say that. I don't try to. I don't like, yeah.
Sometimes
you
can't
go out of
avoid
my way.
it, but, you know.
Yeah. I don't know. It doesn't matter. Michael Hendricks says, I hate being called Chief. Pisses me off. Do you mean if somebody's like, what's up, Chief?
Yeah,
how you doing, Chief?
That was big when I was
Is that kind of a condescending?
Oh.
Is that you think?
No, when I was a kid, my dad and all the men like I grew up around, everyone kind of had their own thing.
Yeah, read what Tyler said. He said he calls his boss chief when he's pissed off. He said it's my way of just like saying it. He's like, hey, Chief.
I don't know, like my dad.
Is it kind of like calling somebody son?
Oh, well, you don't call me son. I know
well, that's what I'm saying. That's what I mean. I feel like that's how they're.
Yeah, it could be.
Yeah,
I just know, like growing up, it was like one of my dad's buddies called people Chief. You know, my dad would call people Buddy. A lot of the young guys that were my age called everybody Bo. What's up, Bo? That's what they would say.
That's the South.
And my dad would be like, well, Bo is like a male boyfriend.
Oh, that's not real. Not the way
because
they're saying it.
Because it was the older term.
I know.
Like, right.
So Michael says Chief is a backhanded, condescending nickname. That's what I was kind of assuming.
Okay, yeah, son. That's when I was a kid, some grown man called me son. Tyler,
this is funny too, right, guys? We talk about like your location geographically makes a difference too. Mm-hmm. Like for instance, grow up in the South, everybody says ma'am and sir because it's respect. It's like, it doesn't mean you're old. It just means respect. But I had friends who moved here years ago or moved to Tennessee when I was there from Wisconsin, and like her family came to visit and heard her son, who had then been in Tennessee for a few years, calling her ma'am, saying yes, ma'am. Mm-hmm. And she was used to it by then and she didn't care. But her uncle, I think it was like, why would you let him say that? And like, that's rude or that's calling you old. Mm-hmm. And she was like, no, not at all. Like, that's not how. So wherever you live, things are very different. But Tyler's saying, but Tyler, you're up in Canada, right? Because he's saying that, like, if you're my senior, you can call me son. But I think it's also how it's given, kind of like Chief. Like when Brian was saying when he was a kid, men called each other Chief, but it wasn't like condescension.
Yeah.
You know? Right. Yeah. But like for you guys, so I think that for here, if you say son, it's condescending. Like, or even if I say it to my own kids, like if I'm angry and say something to a teenager and say like, all right.
Look, son,
come over here. That means like,
that's what I'm saying.
There's like, it's over. We're gonna.
Yeah,
it's time to have a talk.
Man, that was one that would get me. That was my trigger when I was a kid.
He said it's safer just to call everyone ass face.
I thought it would be safe to call everybody buddy. Apparently not.
I don't think you can do a woman to man buddy.
No, I guess these goofballs have decided that's something you can't do. John was up there yapping earlier in the comments.
I put a couple of his comments up.
Yeah.
I'm not saying that out loud. What does that mean?
Yeah.
I have a feeling it means something, but I'm not what it's going to say. Like if I said it, so I'm not going to say it.
Yeah. He said my wife doesn't like it that I call dudes brother.
Oh, you can say that.
Yeah, it depends on how. Like some people can use it like every other word. Or hit you with like the Hulk Hogan. Brother. What do you say there, brother? Yeah. Yeah, I don't know.
He said it's the tone behind the words. That's true.
That is. That look, son. Man.
Oh.
That's a bad one.
If you hear me saying it and the teenager's not home yet and was supposed to have been,
yeah,
it's gonna be a lively night.
Mm-hmm.
All right.
Oh, I got a quick question.
Okay.
I forgot to ask it earlier because I didn't want to like derail or distract you. The skin in the 50s, were they using like embalming fluid? Is that like when he would dig it up? Is that why the skin was not like decomposing or why it wasn't breaking down?
Well, he also, yeah, they were, right? I think that, practices and things have changed a little bit, but yes, but also he took it upon himself to learn different trades. And so, like I said, like he was kind of, he was reading about shrunken heads. He was he was trying different ways of tanning, but his dad had tanned hides as one of his jobs for a while. So he kind of gleaned from that. Mm-hmm. He also, yeah, I think Butter's got that right. I think she's got it exactly right. They also found in the house, what?
No, that's what I'm saying. That would make sense.
Yeah, I think so too. They also found in his home, when we were talking about the different parts that they found, kind of going back to that, but they found basically like a length of like vulva with other skin and whatever, but it had been laid out in a different kind of way than the others had, and it had salt on it. Okay. But I think that was part of his tanning, like hides and things. So like at every turn, he was trying to make things last longer or stay, be preserved more so.
That was my assumption. You may have said some of that earlier as well.
Yeah. Okay, go clean, Tyler. What time is it in Canada? Like 5 a.m.? That was a joke. All right. Have a good time cleaning, Tyler. All right. You about ready to wrap it up?
No, I could talk all night.
I know it.
I know. No, I guess we should.
It's been eventful over here. We've got a kid with a broken toe.
I know.
A nail coming off of it and a toe broken. Don't drop a weight plate on your foot.
Rained on last night.
Got rained on sleeping outside last night.
Last night was like a full moon.
Right? It was amazing.
Yeah.
You put on your leggings and your mask and danced around the backyard.
I do like staring at a moon.
Yes.
So we were out of town just for a little bit, and then walked outside, and there was a moon and clouds, and then driving home, I kept staring at the moon.
That was beautiful last night.
To get out underneath it was incredible until it rained.
All right. Thank y'all for joining us. We do love you guys. Again, that Murder in Apartment 603 is on Hulu, the documentary that dropped about Ellen Greenberg. It's still continuing to get a lot of traction. Really big deal. I did go back through, if you guys haven't listened to some like after the fact press conferences and things like that, switching it up on the yogurt shop murders that we covered last week, where those poor men were vindicated after all these decades, and the actual murderer was identified. So we got a lot of movement on some of these cases, but definitely keep your eye out again on Ellen Greenberg. Like, that hasn't gone away, and her family might be finally getting some answers. I really do think it's a matter of time before all of that corruption and all of that grossness just has to come crashing down. And it sounds like it's happening there. We're still keeping current with Angie Solomon and everything that's going on there. She's still out on bond. I think she's got a pretrial coming up here in next month or something. Is what they were saying yesterday, I think. So yeah, if you guys have any questions, if you have any recommendations, you can email us at andreauplate@yahoo.com. Send a message on Andrea Uplate Instagram page. You can leave comments, reviews, all this stuff. We do appreciate you hitting the thumbs up and the stars and writing some words or whatever. You can hear us.
Apple reviews.
Apple reviews.
Remind them of that.
Yeah, I always forget about Apple reviews. But again, if you listen on audio, you can pretty much wherever audio podcasts can be streamed, or screamed. I scream sometimes. You can find them there. You can always watch us every Tuesday live here, and chit chat with our buddies here in the chats. Doesn't cost a dime. You can follow Brian at Brian Sanders Disruptors on Instagram. You can go to his website at the Disruptors with Brian Sanders. I think I got it. And go listen to him. He's got a bunch of new shows out, doing a lot of stuff.
Oh yeah. Yeah, I had last week I posted William Kaufman, movie director. It was a really cool episode. A lot of fun to talk to that dude. So
very cool.
I'll put one out this week. I've got a bunch stacked up. I have no idea which one I want to do yet. But
so you usually drop yours on Wednesdays, correct?
I try. I'm not as disciplined or timely as you are.
What time did we go on tonight? Oh my gosh. All right. Well, look, we love you guys. Reach out if you have any questions or case suggestions. As always, we enjoy your input, and we hope y'all have a great week and enjoy some of this fall coming up. Also, we'll be putting out Halloween hints.
Oh yeah.
We'll have to decide what the prize will be for the first person to guess it.
Yes.
T-shirt or something. We'll give you a couple options, maybe. How about that? Yeah, Maureen says Sanders Disruptors, Brian with the dot. Got it. That's perfect. All right, guys. We love y'all and hope you have the best week ever. And hey, do you want to tell these people good night?
I will not do it. Good night, everybody.
All right, guys. Until next week, we will see y'all next Tuesday. Good night, y'all.